A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Always good to be able to welcome Nicholas Lay, the Northern Territory Director of the Australian Christian Lobby. Hey, Nicholas, welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Nicholas, the Pro-Palestinian demonstrations plastered across news services. It's everywhere in the news today. Lots of demonstrations held around lots of our national capital cities yesterday. What were your impressions?
Yeah, look, it is a bit unbelievable that so many people were marching over the weekend in support of Palestine. Look, it's undeniably a significant political statement, you know, even just to have all the media coverage around it. And, you know, we're in the business of equipping people in politics and advocacy. So, you know, when you see something like this, you note that it's a significant political statement. And I think it's probably a reflection of the state of our nation at large and even our politics. You know, that this is the topic of discussion. And even for me, closer to home, you know, living in Alice Springs, we had a local government election over the weekend, and one of the candidates, Aya Newport, was calling for an independent audit into Alice Springs Town Council's ties to Israel. I mean, it's just unbelievable that this is part of our local government elections too. And she even said that we have a base here, a US Australian defence base in Alice Springs called Pine Gap, and she was also calling that employees shouldn't be welcome at community events. So, yeah, it's just plaguing the political conversation. It's quite incredible to see.
It's a movement that has been fuelled by our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese's decision to recognise Palestinian statehood. And there's a lot of things that are coming in behind the Prime Minister's leadership there, and I'm not sure whether he anticipated this. Just touch on the numbers here for a few moments. I've read a report or two this morning, but, you know, the wildly exaggerated numbers from organisers. Now, there was a lot of people you could see on the television, on the news. But say the Brisbane event, police say 10,000 people turned out. The organisers say 50,000 turned out. At the Melbourne event, police say 10,000 turned out. The organisers say 100,000 turned out.
Oh, wow.
There is a certain, you know, people are prone to exaggerate these sorts of figures, and the media will report what those pro-Palestinians are saying. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how the numbers seem to always be conflated in the direction we don't want. You know, if there's something like this, it's over-exaggerated. Though, you know, I've been to pro-life rallies at different times, and the numbers seem to be under-exaggerated. And yeah, look, I think there's power in what goes out in the media. I think if the media are reporting, you know, 300,000, that's the number that everyone is going to, you know, that's going to be ingrained in history. That's what happened, unfortunately.
And so the protesters are calling for peace. You know, a lot of people can jump on board with that idea. And sanctions on Israel from our Australian government. Now, of course, there were some counter-protesters at the Brisbane March, and there are some images of a counter-protester being escorted away after snatching a Palestinian flag. And those sorts of images, you know, only a small number of counter-protesters, but the image there is that, you know, they're being escorted away by police. There's a messaging in all of that, isn't there, around, you know, what people appear to be standing for. And I don't know whether you think that might be a right message or a wrong message. Any thoughts around the way these things are depicted in the mainstream media?
Yeah, I mean, we all know this. The media is very powerful in how they depict these conversations, what's happening at these rallies. You know, you could have an organised rally that is, you know, we're just giving examples here, but it's very peaceful. And then you have filming a very light, violent section that doesn't depict the whole thing. Or you can have the opposite. You can have a a very hostile gathering, and the media could depict it as very peaceful. We've seen this many times in recent years, and so there is power in the media, and I think accurate reporting of these things would be a great first step in clarifying, I guess, what the feeling of these protests are, what the feeling of the people is. Yeah.
Tens of thousands did turn out. Those are still huge numbers. The big picture, it appears that a lot of Australians have sold out Israel and are siding with the cause of the Palestinians. And, you take that a step further. You could say siding with terrorism because of the links there with Hamas. These are all in the wake of the Albanese decision to recognise Palestinian statehood. And, it can't escape our memory that one of the co-founders of the terrorist group Hamas, Sheikh Hassan Youssef, actually welcomed the Prime Minister's decision to recognise Palestine. Hey, the Christian position in all of this, standing in solidarity with Israel as the people of God, that's like a biblical founded position. Modern Israel, you can very, very strongly argue, miraculously restored. What is God doing with people in the last days that he calls his people? Caution not to curse Israel, but to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm talking where we might stand as Christians here. To stand pro-Palestinian appears to be stand against Israel and might be the first foot into anti-Semitism. Just on the anti-Semitism thing here, any thoughts from you? I mean, there's a lot of Christians who are thinking it's all fine to support the Palestinian cause here, but it's the first foot into anti-Semitism, as far as I can see. Any thoughts from you, Nicholas?
Yeah, look, I think we need to be careful in this area. We shouldn't just jump on the bandwagon as these conversations are taking place. And I think the jumping on the pro-Palestinian movement, I see it as really, I've heard this term recently, a weapon of mass distraction, and that we're seeing these political ideas, topics that come up, and it just distracts us from what's going on in our own backyard and the things that we should be focused on. And jumping on these bandwagons, like I said, distracts us. I mean, I wonder how many of these people marching over the weekend realise that there is a battle for life going on in their own backyards, more close to home. I mean, if we look at the numbers in this Israel-Hamas war, over the 21 months, we're seeing about 63,000 people have been killed, which is a terrible thing. And, we're praying for peace, that would be resolved. But in Australia, over a similar 21-month period, we abort about 155,000 babies. And that's a never-ending thing. Australia's abortion rate is 2.5 times higher than all deaths in the Gaza-Israel conflict over the same period. And I think it's we shouldn't neglect these things, absolutely. But for these people that are marching over the weekends, I wish they would look a bit closer to home.
The way you frame it, a weapon of mass distraction. And, when you've got a cost of living crisis, there's a homelessness issue that is at crisis level. People can't buy a home anymore. There's a housing crisis here in Australia. So you might wonder if a weapon of mass distraction might be welcomed in some ways by political leadership. Hey, let's talk about this abortion issue for a few moments because something significant coming up. The Baby Booties campaign, and, when you're talking about the sorts of numbers of babies that are aborted in Australia, which you might say is crisis level here in Australia, that's a crisis. It's an important thing that's coming up this week, isn't it, on Wednesday?
That's right. So, if you're watching this rally over the weekend and you want to do something yourself, there's a great opportunity for you this week in Canberra on Wednesday from 11:30 a.m. We're doing our annual Baby Booties campaign. This is the third year it's ran, and what we do is we get people to hand make little knitted baby booties, send them in, and we display thousands of them on the lawns of Parliament. And it's to symbolise the lives lost in Australia through abortion. Abortion is a topic that we have lost empathy for in Australia, that, we had those conversations and then nobody wants to touch it anymore. You see Queensland putting in a gag order against any discussion around it in Parliament. And so we really need to keep this in the forefront and to stand up to protect life here in Australia. These lives that have been taken in our own backyards, in our own neighbourhoods. I mean, the rates are so high that, we would be so closely connected to this. We may not see a lot of it in our own lives, but statistically, we know it affects many people around us. And, one baby is aborted every 6 minutes in Australia. So even just in this conversation we're having, Neil, there's at least 2 or 3 that will be statistically aborted in this conversation length. So it's a statistic that we can't deny, and we can't stop talking about it. We can't stop bringing it into the public square. So this event is an opportunity to highlight that. And it's a beautiful display. There's some great photos from last year, and we've got some MPs and senators coming down, and our CEO, Michelle Pearce, will be there and speaking. So it's a great opportunity to put this back in the public's perspective, and hopefully that we'll get some political traction in trying to protect life in our own backyard, in our own neighbourhoods. So if you're around Canberra or nearby, please make the journey. It all counts. We'd love to see 300,000 people there. That would make a humongous statement. That would be incredible.
As you say, Nicholas, there'll be some MPs and senators that'll be speaking at the event, and it's interesting. They've got to have a certain level of courage to stand up for life. When you mentioned numbers, I think you mentioned 155,000. Was that the number that you mentioned? That sort of number is staggering, and so we abort our babies, and then we need to import our immigration levels to be able to make up numbers. And then we say, oh, I wonder why our culture is changing so badly, losing the sorts of things that we had as a harmonious culture here in Australia. We're in for dramatic culture change, aren't we, the way that things are going, largely because we're aborting babies.
Yes, it is a absolute tragedy, and it would really help our population if these babies lived, and even if they were put into adoption. It's actually it's a huge positive to even the housing market when we are just having children, having babies, because they're not needing their own house or whatever first. So you're getting that population increase, which is a good thing for our country, and not having to replace it because we're losing these children. And even the adoption kind of industry is a bizarre thing at the moment. I have a good friends, a Christian couple that, are looking to have kids, haven't been able to, and so they wanted to adopt around Queensland, and they just simply found it too hard. It's too hard in Australia. We don't have babies up for adoption anymore, so they've had to go to the US. So it's an incredible reality check of where we are in Australia. And the number I gave earlier was based on a 21-month period, but for a year in Australia, it's about 89,000 abortions a year, just to clarify that one for you.
Okay. Hey, the typical listener to our conversation today might be saying, the trajectory looks pretty bad. Doesn't look like there's any breakthroughs on the horizon anytime soon, but we need to have some level of miraculous intervention here. Praying for abortion legislation in Australia to change, to protect babies in the womb. You've got a prayer webinar that's planned for tomorrow night. What's going on there, Nicholas?
Yeah, prayer is so important in this. We need to continue earnestly, diligently with prayer. And so we're in preparation for this Baby Booties campaign. We're doing a prayer webinar tomorrow night. It's running from 7:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time to 8:30. And so, yeah, we're just asking for people to join us for that. You can register at our website, acl.org.au, and you'll receive a Zoom link. And so this will be led primarily by pastors, church leaders, and those who work in pregnancy support centres around the nation. And so we've currently got 700 people registered to attend, and so we'd love to see that grow even more. And so we'll be praying diligently that we would see abortion, that it will be, wound back, that we'll get some political traction, that life will be cherished, and that people will be healed by this, healed from the traumas of this, because it does so much damage. It doesn't end the trauma when people choose to have an abortion. And so healing for people that have been through this, and ways we can support women that have gone down this path. So a great opportunity for unity to come together in prayer in preparation for the Baby Booties campaign, which will be on the Wednesday.
Nicholas, the other big life issue is around euthanasia or voluntary assisted dying. And, when we talk about, the trajectory doesn't look good on the abortion issue, been a few little breakthroughs in the Northern Territory around VAD. Any update for us?
Yeah, so it's been a significant campaign, and we've been putting a lot of pressure on in the NT, trying to stop it coming here. And we're in our last week of submissions, and so I've been encouraging everyone to make a submission opposing it. And so particularly Territorians, but also plenty of people across the nation have written into the NT, particularly with their experiences interstate. So that's been helpful. So please, I would encourage listeners today, if they can, to write a submission to that inquiry, just opposing it, just opposing the introduction. That's as simple as it needs to be. And we're looking at I've gone through and surveyed the submissions so far. There's about 200 in, and look, it's 71% is supporting it. So that's not a good thing. So we just need, at least 78 people to write a submission opposing it, and we can bring those numbers back up to a 50-50, which would be much more contendable. So, but it's still ongoing. We've been putting a lot of pressure on with the interviews. I had an opportunity to meet with the committee last week, which was great, and there's been some great voices speaking out against this in the NT, and some great conversation going on there. Certainly
for Territorians who are listening into our conversation now, that's your encouragement, is you can do something very important in the next few minutes. And no doubt there's a link on the ACL website for being able to put in a submission. Is that where, if you're a Territorian listening in, you want to do a submission, you want to rise to the occasion, Nicholas Lay said I should, on the ACL website, is that the way you get that link?
The best way with this issue would just be to email ntoffice@acl.org.au, and I can help people through the process. That'll be the best way for this particular issue.
Okay, ntoffice@acl.org.au. Nicholas Lay is the Northern Territory Director of the Australian Christian Lobby. Nicholas, always love your clarity, love your insights. Thanks so much for giving us a great update once again today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.